This really does need to be seen to be believed. Even when Israel's genocide in Gaza leaves you thinking you can no longer be shocked, and it really is important we never stop being shocked. Now, from the very beginning, as I've said repeatedly, this has to have been the most confessed crime in history. From top to bottom of Israeli society, from the Israeli political and military leadership to Israeli soldiers, we've had a gruesome combination of genocidal intent and the open admission of war crimes. Israeli soldiers have routinely posted their war crimes online for the whole world to see. No attempts at a cover-up, no hiding, no denial, just loud and proud, boasting, relishing, enjoying, being frankly amused, titillated by what they've done. An Al Jazeera documentary recently explored some of the war crimes posted by IDF soldiers online, and we talked about that with the creator of that documentary in a recent video. Now, this latest example is deeply disturbing and deeply revealing. This is the funeral of Shival Ben Natan, a 22-year-old Israeli settler from the West Bank who we will discuss more of. He was killed during Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Here's a subtitled speech of the eulogy given by his brother. I'll quote it again after I play it. Just have a listen. So he says there, God Almighty, we want revenge. Revenge. You entered Gaza to take revenge. As many women, children you can. Everyone you saw. This is what you wanted. And on this day, 1 year after Simchat Torah, when we thought we will massacre the enemy, massacre everyone, that we will expel them all from this land, we are here at your funeral. This is a eulogy at a funeral. It's striking as you watch this video clip as he's talking about taking revenge on women and children. Those you can see in the clip, presumably his relatives and loved ones, look overwhelmed by grief and are emotionally processing what is being said as though they're deeply moving recollections of a tragically deceased person. You know, like at funerals that aren't celebrations of war crimes, the usual type of funeral, relatives would be saying, oh, they were such a kind soul, they dedicated so much time to charity, they loved to party or spend time with their children. And the other mourners would, be closing their eyes and crying as they process what they heard. In this example, they're literally listening to how their beloved relatives slaughtered women and children in an orgy of vengeance, getting emotional as they also cry out for more vengeance. I can imagine like a really dark comedy series which pushed the boundaries with scenarios which are just really twisted and unhinged, doing a sketch like this. But guess what? It's real. This is actually happening. And it's not only happening, it's happening with the active support and complicity of our governments and most of our media. Now, I can read out what was said in the rest of that eulogy. The entire nation, he says, will have the opportunity to avenge your revenge, blood revenge, not the revenge of burning houses, not the revenge of burning streets, not the revenge of burning cars, but the revenge of blood you spilt. Anyway, there were other eulogies at the funeral. Here's another one from a fellow soldier.
קשה להאמין איך אתה יושב, ילד בן 22, 20 חבר'ה מבוגרים ממנו בהרבה, שחלקם יכולים להיות ההורים שלו, וכולם מקשיבים לו, מחכים לשמוע מה יש לו להגיד. היית הבן אדם הכי שמח ואופטימי ושטותניק במחלקה. נתקלנו בזה לראשונה בעזה כששרפת הבית בלי אישור בשביל האווירה.
Let me just quote that one, shall I? He says, you were the happiest and most optimistic and frivolous person in the platoon. We saw it the first time in Gaza when you unauthorizedly burnt a house just to lift the atmosphere. Before I tell you more about who this dead soldier is, which is itself hideously revealing, the fact they're just openly celebrating war crimes, and these are grave war crimes, at a public funeral screams a few things, like impunity. You only behave like this if you really honestly think you can get away with anything, as well as genocidal racism, an open belief that Palestinians are just fair game to be butchered indiscriminately. Yet another speaker recounted that last October, this now dead settler shot and killed a Palestinian man in the West Bank. He shot 40-year-old Bilal Salah when he was harvesting olives and killed him in front of his wife and children. Never facing justice for what he did. The speaker at the funeral said about this, I was so impressed by you, and added, you shoot, you talk, you drive them away. I would know that in the West Bank, hundreds of Palestinians, including at least 165 children, have been killed in the last year, including recently an 11-year-old Palestinian boy, Abdullah Jamal Hawash, who was shot in the chest. It's the Israeli forces and settlers responsible for this slaughter, with settlers who murder and maim and attack and intimidate Palestinians protected by the Israeli state. Now, as for the war crimes of this dead soldier, we know that at least 16,000 children have been killed, Palestinian children, by the Israeli state. That itself is a drastic underestimate. And that includes not just, say, airstrikes when the Israeli military selects targets knowing that there are children and babies at home before they blow them up, but includes the deliberate shooting of children in the head and chest by Israeli snipers. Just recently, dozens of US-based medics who served in Gaza shared their hideous stories of receiving such children who had clearly been intentionally killed. We also know about the systematic burning down of Palestinian homes for no military purpose because IDF soldiers keep posting themselves doing it and celebrating it. They also keep posting themselves blowing up civilian infrastructure, such as universities, with no military purpose, but because of a deliberate attempt to erase Palestinian society, culture, and identity. That itself, of course, being a key plank of a genocidal onslaught. Now, today, South Africa delivered the evidence for their case of genocide against Israel to the International Court of Justice. It is 750 pages, but it has thousands of appendices and evidence and all the rest of it. It has volumes 1 and 2. It hasn't been publicly released as of yet. What South Africa said is that the evidence for Israel's genocidal intent is undeniable. On top of that, the evidence, they say, exposes a pattern of mass casualties. The South African ambassador to the UN, in fact, said, the problem is that we have too much evidence, and they had to take thousands of pages of evidence and condense them into thematic legal arguments, as Al Jazeera have reported. Now, they've already reportedly nearly 100 people working on the case. Unfortunately, the International Court of Justice processes take a very long time. A key point made by South Africa is that Israeli political and military leaders and soldiers, when addressing their domestic audiences, have flaunted shamelessly their genocidal intent while sending English speakers to talk to the Western media to say completely different things, that is, lies about respecting international law and so on. Then the Western media, in turn, has framed their case around those deceitful statements rather than what Israeli leaders and soldiers have been saying to Israelis, often simply just not reporting them, erasing the statements from existence. In doing so, erasing genocidal intent. That itself is one of the worst journalistic scandals of our age. There must be accountability. Finally, please support this if you can. I'm off to travel around the United States from Thursday onwards to cover the election. The idea is to ask the questions the corporate media outlets won't, from the role played by complicity in genocide to a catastrophically broken economic model. That means hiring brilliant local videographers and paying them properly. Principles, of course, only matter if you live by them. So it's going to be hugely expensive, to say the least, especially because the plan is to cover what happens after the election with possible turmoil beckoning. If you want to help, please go to patreon.com/ownjazz84. The plan is to expand the operation, do far more of those videos around the world, which of course can only be done as ever with your support, as well as on a new Substack yet to be launched, investigative journalism. And we have a very big project which will be released. As ever, please like, subscribe, help us take on a media which has helped facilitate genocide at patreon.com/ownjazz84. And yeah, I will soon see you in the United States.